Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. A while back, I did a practical accuracy test of this AR-15 pistol with an arm brace. And as you may recall, I didn't want to spend a lot of money on an arm brace for just that one test, so I came up with a very simplistic little brace that was basically just a strut that clipped onto the buffer tube and provided the right spacing between the buffer tube and my arm. And then to effect the mechanical constraint of the brace, I just wrapped a bunch of duct tape around that to duct tape the brace and the buffer tube to my arm. And as you may recall, in that test I concluded that while a brace does improve practical accuracy for one-handed shooting, if you have two good hands, as I do, then if anything, it's actually counterproductive. Well, predictably, there were a lot of people who said in the comments that that was only because I'd used this improvised brace that had to be duct taped to my arm, and that if I just used a proper brace, I'd get completely different results. Now, my first inclination was just kind of to dismiss those comments because while my improvised brace was admittedly pretty crude, it did provide the same mechanical constraint as any other arm brace would. So, sure, it might not be as comfortable, it certainly was probably not as convenient as some other braces, but it should have about the same effect on practical accuracy, which is what I was measuring. But then I sort of reconsidered that position because, admittedly, there's a lot of intangible factors that go into ergonomics, and I wouldn't want to dismiss a valuable technology for improving practical accuracy just because I tested a poor implementation of it and got a bad first impression. Because admittedly, there are a lot of technologies that fail commercially due to poor implementation and poor first impressions, even when the idea itself has a lot of merit. That's something we see all too often in engineering. So I wanted to give the brace a second chance, but I still didn't have $200 to go blow on a fancy name brand commercial brace. So I went back to the drawing board and I came up with this, which is a much more sophisticated brace that I can still just 3D print. And the way this works is that this is a conical fit in here, or a conic frustrum, and then there's a cutout, so I can just stick my arm in there, and then I can adjust this brace, up and down the buffer tube to where that conic section fits the size of my arm, so I've got a good snug fit. And this provides the same mechanical constraint as any other arm brace, but it's actually quite comfortable and much easier to get into and out of than the one that I had to duct tape to my arm. So I think the first thing that we need to do is just repeat our one-handed accuracy test. I've got an LPVO on this pistol at the moment, whereas last time I had a red dot, which is probably a little more appropriate for this test due to the long eye relief. But I think this will work okay. It's not going to be as fast as the red dot, but it should be just as accurate. Okay, I was going to fire a 5-shot group, but then there was one shot that I felt like I really pulled the gun to the right, so I decided to throw that one out and do a repeat, so fired 6 shots. I'm pretty sure this is the one that I pulled, so that leaves us with a 5-shot group that's really about 4 inches across there. So that would be, about 16 MOA? For one-handed shooting at 25 yards, I'd say that's not half bad. As you may recall, last time, for comparison's sake, I also fired a one-handed group without the brace, and I was able to keep all 5 shots on paper, but just barely, so it's like a 10 to 12-inch group. So our 4-inch group down there clearly demonstrates that the arm brace does provide a significant improvement in practical accuracy for one-handed shooting. But that begs the question of, well, what about two-handed shooting? What if I've got two good hands? Does the brace still buy me anything? And last time we concluded that no, it doesn't. I tried a couple of different stances. The best that I could come up with for a two-handed stance with the brace was kind of like that. And I didn't shoot any better that way than I did shooting the pistol one-handed with the brace. Now, with this brace, I think I figured out that what I can do is cant the gun about 45 degrees, sort of go semi-gangster style, and then cheek pistol it, and I think that'll give me a two-handed stance that's not too awfully awkward. So let's give that a try. We'll fire a 5-shot group and see how it compares to our one-handed shooting. Okay, that still felt kind of awkward, but if we look at the target, I was able to shoot about a 2.5-inch group at 25 yards, or 10 MOA, which for me at least is about par even for shooting like a rifle or carbine offhand. Okay, so maybe with a better brace, two-handed shooting is actually a viable option. But I think what we need to do for comparison now is take the brace off and try a few shots, try shooting a group from that same semi-cheek pistol stance without using the brace to see whether it's the brace that's having any effect or not. Okay, I didn't want to drop the brace in the snow, and so instead of taking it all the way off, I just rotated it out of the way, as you can see there. But now let's try our semi-cheek pistol stance without using. Okay, well, our second group shooting two-handed without the brace is actually solidly inside of the group that I shot two-handed with the brace. In fact, this is like a 2-inch, maybe 1 3/4-inch group. Okay, so having had a chance now to try out a little bit better of an arm brace, I will concede that the concept is growing on me a little bit. I mean, this thing definitely helps for one-handed shooting. It's certainly much easier to use and more comfortable than the one that I made previously. If you had two of these, one right hand and one left hand, and could dual wield AR pistols, that would make a great picture for social media, even though it probably wouldn't be practical on the range. But I don't think that this retest changes our overall conclusions. Last time I concluded that a brace is definitely helpful if you're constrained to shoot one-handed, but will probably be counterproductive if you can shoot two-handed. And once again, that seems to be exactly what we saw today. So for myself, even though the brace definitely made a better impression this time, I would much rather have a stabilizing harness on this gun instead, or just have a carbine with a stock rather than having a pistol with a brace. Now, that said, I'm not going to fault anyone for shooting an AR pistol with a brace, especially if you've got some kind of injury or disability that compels you to shoot one-handed. And, in fact, I will probably post the STL file for this brace design on my website, so if you have a 3D printer or know somebody who has a 3D printer, you can print one of these off for like $1 worth of plastic filament, instead of spending $50, $100, $200 on a commercial brace, if you're so inclined. Anyway, until next time, thank you for watching The Idahoan Show.